Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls in her small Texas town. While her classmates played with dolls, she spent weekends at her grandfather's ranch learning to shoot tin cans off fence posts. Her grandfather, a Vietnam veteran, noticed something special in the young girl's steady hands and sharp eyes. He taught her that shooting wasn't about aggression, but about patience, precision, and respect for the weapon. When Sarah turned 18, she shocked everyone by announcing her intention to join the Navy. Her parents thought it was just a phase, something she would grow out of after a few months of basic training. Her high school friends couldn't understand why she would choose such a difficult path, when she could easily get into any college with her excellent grades. Even her guidance counselor tried to steer her toward more traditional careers for women. But Sarah had made up her mind. She had spent countless hours researching the Navy SEALs, knowing that women weren't officially allowed in combat roles at the time. She understood the challenges ahead, but something deep inside her knew this was her calling. Her grandfather was the only one who truly supported her decision, telling her that warriors aren't made by their gender but by their heart and determination. Basic training proved to be everything Sarah expected and more. The physical demands were intense, but she had prepared her body through years of ranch work and athletics. What surprised her most was the mental challenge. The instructors pushed every recruit to their breaking point, testing not just their physical strength but their ability to think clearly under extreme pressure. Sarah quickly stood out among her peers. While others struggled with the shooting range, she consistently scored perfect marks. Her ability to remain calm and focused during high-stress situations caught the attention of her commanding officers. They began to notice that Sarah had an unusual gift for reading situations and people, skills that would prove invaluable in special operations. During her second year of service, the military began opening more combat roles to women. Sarah immediately applied for sniper training. Despite facing skepticism from many of her male colleagues, some questioned whether a woman could handle the psychological demands of being a sniper. Others doubted her physical ability to carry heavy equipment over long distances. The sniper training program was brutal. Candidates were required to remain motionless for hours at a time, sometimes in uncomfortable positions and harsh weather conditions. They had to learn to control their breathing, heartbeat, and even their thoughts to achieve the perfect shot. Many highly qualified male candidates dropped out within the first few weeks. Sarah not only survived the training but excelled at it. Her instructors were amazed by her natural ability to calculate wind speed, distance, and trajectory in seconds. She could spot targets that others missed and had an intuitive understanding of how environmental factors affected bullet travel. More importantly, she demonstrated the mental toughness required to make life and death decisions in split seconds. After completing sniper training, Sarah continued to advance through the ranks. She volunteered for the most challenging assignments and consistently delivered exceptional results. Her reputation began to spread throughout the special operations community. Fellow snipers respected her skills, even if some were initially surprised to be working alongside a woman. Sarah's first real test came during a hostage rescue mission in Eastern Europe. Intelligence reports indicated that terrorists were holding American diplomats in a remote compound. The mission required precise coordination between ground forces and sniper support. Sarah was positioned on a hillside nearly 1,000 yards from the target building. As the rescue team prepared to move in, Sarah spotted movement in the compound that the ground team couldn't see. Through her scope, she identified 3 additional guards that intelligence had missed. Her quick thinking and accurate reporting allowed the mission planners to adjust their strategy, ultimately saving lives and ensuring the mission's success. Word of Sarah's performance reached higher levels of command. She was soon recruited for an elite special operations unit that handled the military's most sensitive missions. Her new role would require not just exceptional marksmanship skills, but also leadership abilities and strategic thinking. The transition to leadership wasn't easy. Some team members initially struggled to accept orders from a female commander, especially one who was younger than many of them. Sarah had to prove herself not just as a sniper, but as a tactician and leader. She spent extra time studying battle strategies, learning about her team members' strengths and weaknesses, and developing new approaches to complex missions. Sarah's leadership style was different from what her team was used to. She believed in thorough planning and clear communication. Before every mission, she made sure every team member understood not just their own role, but how their actions fit into the larger objective. She encouraged questions and input from her team, recognizing that good ideas could come from anyone regardless of rank. Her approach began to pay off. The team's mission success rate improved significantly under Sarah's command. More importantly, they accomplished their objectives with fewer casualties and less collateral damage. Other units began to study Sarah's methods, and she was often asked to train new commanders. Despite her growing reputation, Sarah continued to face skeptics both within and outside the military. Some critics argued that women shouldn't be in combat roles at all, claiming they would be a distraction or liability. Others suggested that her success was due to luck rather than skill. These comments stung, but Sarah used them as motivation to work even harder. The real test of Sarah's abilities was about to come. Intelligence agencies had been tracking a terrorist cell that was planning a major attack on American interests overseas. The group's leader was considered one of the most dangerous men in the world, responsible for numerous attacks that had killed hundreds of innocent people. Sarah's unit was tasked with eliminating this threat before the planned attack could be carried out. The mission would be extremely dangerous, requiring them to operate in hostile territory with minimal support. Success would depend entirely on Sarah's leadership and her team's skills. As Sarah studied the intelligence reports and satellite images of the target location, she realized this would be unlike any mission she had faced before. The enemy was well-armed, highly trained, and operating from a fortified position. Traditional assault tactics would likely result in heavy casualties on both sides. Sarah began developing a plan that would rely on stealth, precision, and perfect timing. She knew that her team's lives would depend on every decision she made. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but she felt ready for the challenge. Years of training, experience, and gradual acceptance by her peers had prepared her for this moment. Little did Sarah know that this mission would become the defining moment of her career, proving once and for all that her gender had nothing to do with her ability to lead and fight. The doubters were about to witness something extraordinary. The briefing room was thick with tension as Sarah spread out the aerial photographs and intelligence reports across the metal table. Her team of 8 elite operators gathered around, their faces serious as they studied the target location. The terrorist compound was situated in a mountainous region, surrounded by rocky terrain that provided both excellent defensive positions and numerous hiding spots for enemy fighters. Sarah pointed to various locations on the map with a laser pointer, her voice steady and confident as she outlined the challenge ahead. The terrorist leader, known only by his code name, the Scorpion, had chosen his hideout well. The compound was built into the side of a cliff, with only one main access road that was heavily guarded. Intelligence suggested there were at least 20 armed fighters protecting the location. All of them experienced combat veterans. Team member Rodriguez, a seasoned explosives expert, studied the photographs carefully before speaking up. He had worked with Sarah on 3 previous missions and had initially been skeptical of taking orders from a woman. However, her tactical brilliance and calm leadership had quickly won his respect. He pointed out that the compound's defensive advantages would make a traditional assault extremely costly. Sarah nodded in agreement, then moved to a detailed schematic of the compound's layout. She had spent hours analyzing every aspect of the target, looking for weaknesses that others might have missed. Her attention to detail was legendary among special operations units, and she had a reputation for finding solutions to seemingly impossible tactical problems. The compound's main building was 3 stories high, with reinforced concrete walls and narrow windows that would make it difficult for attackers to gain entry. Satellite imagery showed armed guards patrolling the perimeter in regular patterns, while others were positioned in elevated guard posts with commanding views of the surrounding area. The Scorpion himself was believed to be on the top floor, surrounded by his most trusted lieutenants. Sarah's plan was unlike anything her team had attempted before. Instead of a direct assault, she proposed a precision operation that would eliminate the guards silently and systematically, creating confusion and allowing them to reach their primary target with minimal resistance. The key to success would be perfect coordination and split-second timing. She assigned each team member specific roles based on their individual strengths and experience. Martinez, their communications specialist, would establish and maintain contact with headquarters while monitoring enemy radio frequencies. Thompson and Williams, both expert marksmen, would provide sniper support from elevated positions. The remaining team members would handle infiltration, explosives, and close-quarters combat as needed. What made Sarah's approach unique was her emphasis on adaptability. Unlike commanders who insisted on rigid adherence to predetermined plans, she taught her team to think independently and adjust to changing circumstances. She believed that battlefield conditions were unpredictable, and the ability to improvise often meant the difference between success and failure. During the planning phase, Sarah's team raised numerous concerns about the mission's complexity. The terrain was unfamiliar. They would be operating without backup, and the enemy significantly outnumbered them. Some team members privately wondered if their commander was being overly ambitious, attempting something that more experienced leaders might consider too risky. Sarah addressed each concern methodically, demonstrating how her plan accounted for various contingencies. She had studied similar operations throughout military history, learning from both successes and failures. Her approach combined proven tactical principles with innovative solutions to the unique challenges presented by this particular mission. The team spent days rehearsing different aspects of the operation, using detailed mock-ups and computer simulations. Sarah insisted on practicing each scenario repeatedly until every movement became automatic. She knew that in high-stress combat situations, soldiers often reverted to their training, so that training had to be perfect. One aspect of the mission that particularly concerned the team was the extraction plan. Getting into the compound would be difficult enough, but escaping after eliminating their target would be even more challenging. Enemy reinforcements would likely arrive quickly, and the team would need to reach their extraction point while potentially under heavy fire. Sarah had anticipated this problem and developed multiple exit strategies. She had identified 3 different routes away from the compound, each with its own advantages and risks. The team would make their final escape route decision based on circumstances at the time, maintaining the flexibility that had become Sarah's tactical trademark. As the mission date approached, Sarah noticed increased tension among her team members. This was natural before dangerous operations, but she was particularly sensitive to her team's emotional state. She had learned that a commander's confidence and composure could significantly impact their unit's performance. Sarah made a point of spending individual time with each team member, discussing their concerns and reinforcing their importance to the mission's success. She had found that personal attention and genuine care for her soldiers' welfare created stronger unit cohesion and better battlefield performance. 2 days before the mission, Sarah received updated intelligence that changed some of their assumptions about enemy strength and positioning. The Scorpion had apparently increased his security detail, and there were now believed to be at least 30 fighters at the compound instead of 20. Some commanders might have requested additional support or postponed the mission, but Sarah saw this as another tactical puzzle to solve. She quickly revised their approach, adjusting timing and positioning to account for the additional enemies. Her ability to rapidly process new information and modify complex plans impressed even her most experienced team members. They began to understand why higher command had such confidence in their young female leader. The night before departure, Sarah conducted a final briefing that covered every detail of the mission one last time. She answered questions, addressed concerns, and made sure every team member understood not just their own responsibilities, but how their actions affected the entire operation. Her thoroughness and attention to detail helped build confidence among the team. During the briefing, Sarah also discussed rules of engagement and emphasized the importance of minimizing civilian casualties. The compound was located near a small village, and innocent people could be endangered if the operation went wrong. This humanitarian concern was another aspect of Sarah's leadership that set her apart from more traditional military commanders. As the team prepared their equipment and conducted final weapons checks, Sarah took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought her to this point. She thought about her grandfather's lessons about responsibility and precision, and how those early teachings had shaped her approach to leadership and combat. The doubters who had questioned her abilities throughout her career would soon witness something unprecedented. Sarah was about to demonstrate that skill, intelligence, and determination mattered far more than gender when it came to military leadership. The mission ahead would test every aspect of her training and experience, but she felt ready for whatever challenges awaited her team in the mountains. The helicopter dropped Sarah's team 12 miles from the target compound under cover of darkness. The mountainous terrain was even more challenging than the satellite images had suggested, with loose rocks and steep slopes that made silent movement extremely difficult. Sarah led her team through the treacherous landscape, using night vision equipment to navigate while maintaining complete radio silence. Each team member carried over 60 pounds of specialized equipment, including weapons, ammunition, communications gear, and emergency supplies. The weight was distributed carefully to maintain balance and mobility. But the physical demands of the approach march tested even these elite soldiers. Sarah set a pace that was aggressive but sustainable, knowing they needed to reach their positions before dawn. The team moved in single file, with Sarah at the point position. Her years of training had taught her to read terrain like a map, identifying the safest and quietest routes through difficult landscape. She used hand signals to communicate with her team, pointing out obstacles and adjusting their path to avoid areas where they might be spotted by enemy patrols. After 4 hours of careful movement, they reached a ridge that overlooked the terrorist compound. Sarah used high-powered binoculars to study the target area, comparing what she saw with the intelligence photos. The layout matched their expectations, but she noticed some details that hadn't been visible in the satellite imagery. The compound's lighting was more extensive than anticipated, with floodlights illuminating most of the perimeter. This would make their approach more challenging, but also provided better visibility for her snipers once they were in position. Sarah mentally adjusted her timing calculations, factoring in the increased difficulty of moving through well-lit areas. Through her binoculars, Sarah counted guard positions and studied patrol patterns. The enemy appeared to be following predictable routines, which would work to her team's advantage. She observed for nearly an hour, taking notes and sketching guard movements to identify the optimal timing for their assault. As dawn approached, Sarah led her team to their predetermined staging area, a cluster of large rocks about 800 yards from the compound. This position provided excellent concealment, while offering clear sight lines to multiple target areas. The team would remain hidden here during daylight hours, observing enemy activities and making final preparations. Sarah established a concealed observation post where she could monitor the compound throughout the day. She rotated this duty among team members to prevent fatigue and ensure fresh eyes were always watching for changes in enemy patterns. Each observer added details to their intelligence picture, building a comprehensive understanding of their target. During the day-long observation period, Sarah's team identified several pieces of information that weren't in their original briefing. The terrorists had established additional guard posts since the last satellite pass, and they appeared to be more disciplined than expected. Their patrol schedules were irregular enough to suggest professional military training rather than typical militia organization. Most importantly, Sarah spotted the Scorpion himself during an afternoon meeting on the compound's main building roof. He was easily recognizable from intelligence photographs, and his presence confirmed that their primary target was indeed at the location. Sarah made note of his movements and the security detail that accompanied him everywhere. As evening approached, Sarah gathered her team for a final briefing. She shared the additional intelligence they had gathered and made minor adjustments to their plan. The new guard positions would require slight changes in approach routes, but nothing that fundamentally altered their strategy. Rodriguez expressed concern about the increased number of guards they had observed. Their count now suggested at least 35 enemy fighters, significantly more than original estimates. Sarah acknowledged this challenge but pointed out that their precision approach would actually be more effective against a larger force than traditional assault tactics. Thompson and Williams, her sniper team, confirmed their shooting positions and discussed target priorities. Sarah had identified 12 specific guards whose elimination would create the necessary gaps in enemy coverage for the assault team to reach the main building. These targets were spread across the compound in positions that would require exceptional marksmanship skills. The plan called for Sarah herself to take the most difficult shots. Her position would be the furthest from the compound, requiring shots of over 900 yards in mountainous terrain with unpredictable wind conditions. Several team members privately questioned whether these shots were possible, but none voiced their doubts directly. Sarah spent the final hours before the mission began checking and rechecking her equipment. Her rifle was a custom-modified weapon that she had personally adjusted and tested extensively. Every component had been selected for maximum accuracy and reliability. She cleaned the barrel one final time and verified that her scope was properly calibrated. As darkness fell, the team began moving to their final positions. Sarah would take her shooting position on a rocky outcrop that provided the best angle for engaging multiple targets. Her teammates would position themselves closer to the compound, ready to begin their infiltration once she had eliminated the perimeter guards. The approach to Sarah's shooting position required climbing nearly vertical rock faces in complete darkness. She moved slowly and carefully, testing each handhold before committing her full weight. The 60-pound pack on her back made the climb even more challenging, but her years of physical training had prepared her for exactly this type of demand. Once in position, Sarah set up her rifle and began ranging targets using a laser rangefinder. The distances were at the extreme edge of what most snipers would consider possible, especially in the poor lighting conditions. Wind speed and direction were constantly changing due to the mountainous terrain, making precise shots even more difficult. Sarah had trained for these exact conditions during her sniper development. She had spent countless hours on mountain ranges, learning to read wind patterns and compensate for the effects of altitude and temperature. Her instructors had taught her that exceptional snipers weren't just good shooters. They were also expert meteorologists and ballistics calculators. Using her radio for the first time since the mission began, Sarah contacted her team members to confirm they were in position. Each operator acknowledged readiness using predetermined code words. The assault phase of the mission was about to begin, and everything depended on Sarah's ability to eliminate 12 guards in rapid succession without alerting the others. Sarah studied her first target through her rifle scope, calculating distance, wind drift, and bullet drop. The guard was standing in a well-lit area near the compound's main gate, unaware that he was being observed from nearly 1,000 yards away. Sarah controlled her breathing and heart rate, preparing for the series of shots that would determine the mission's success or failure. The doubters who had questioned her abilities throughout her career were about to witness something extraordinary. In the next few minutes, Sarah would demonstrate why she had earned her reputation as one of the military's most capable commanders. The lives of her team members and the success of their critical mission now depended entirely on her skills and training. Sarah's finger rested lightly on the trigger as she made final calculations for her first shot. The wind had shifted slightly in the past few minutes, and she adjusted her aim to compensate for the change. Through her scope, she could see the guard clearly, standing casually near the compound's main entrance with his rifle slung over his shoulder. The shot would travel nearly 900 yards through mountain air that was constantly moving and shifting. Sarah had practiced similar shots hundreds of times during training, but this was different. There would be no second chances, no opportunity to correct for errors. If she missed or if the sound alerted other guards, her entire team would be in immediate danger. Sarah controlled her breathing, slowing her heart rate through techniques she had learned years ago. She found the natural pause between heartbeats, the moment when her body was completely still. Her crosshairs settled on the target's center mass, and she began the smooth, steady trigger pull that her grandfather had taught her as a child. The rifle's recoil pushed against her shoulder as the bullet left the barrel at over 2,800 feet per second. Sarah immediately worked the bolt to chamber another round while tracking the bullet's flight path through her scope. The shot was perfect, striking the guard exactly where she had aimed. He dropped silently to the ground without even knowing what had happened. 1 down, 11 to go. Sarah immediately shifted to her second target, a guard positioned on the compound's eastern wall. This shot was slightly shorter, about 850 yards, but the target was partially concealed behind a concrete barrier. Sarah would need to wait for him to move into a clear shooting lane. The guard stepped out from behind cover to light a cigarette, presenting Sarah with a perfect target. She adjusted for the new range and wind conditions, then took the shot. Another perfect hit. The guard collapsed behind the barrier, his cigarette falling to the ground where it continued to glow in the darkness. Sarah's training had emphasized the importance of maintaining a steady rhythm during multiple target engagements. Moving too quickly between shots could lead to errors, while moving too slowly might allow enemies to discover their fallen comrades. She had practiced this balance extensively, learning to shoot with both speed and precision. Target 3 was positioned in an elevated guard tower on the compound's north side. The shot was over 900 yards at a steep upward angle, one of the most challenging shots Sarah had ever attempted in combat. She calculated the additional bullet drop caused by the extreme angle and adjusted her aim accordingly. The bullet struck the guard in the chest, and he tumbled forward out of the tower. Sarah winced slightly, hoping the body wouldn't be visible to other guards, but there was no time to worry about factors beyond her control. She had 9 more targets to eliminate before her team could begin their assault. Her 4th target presented a different challenge. The guard was walking a patrol route along the compound's western perimeter, moving in and out of shadows cast by the buildings. Sarah would need to time her shot perfectly to catch him in a well-lit area where she could guarantee a clean hit. Sarah tracked the guard's movement through her scope, learning his pattern and identifying the optimal point to take the shot. When he reached the predetermined position, she fired. The guard stumbled and fell, his body rolling down a small embankment where it came to rest behind some rocks. Targets 5 and 6 were positioned close together near the compound's vehicle garage. Sarah would need to eliminate both quickly to prevent one from alerting others to his partner's death. She ranged the first guard and prepared for a rapid follow-up shot. The first bullet found its mark perfectly, dropping the guard instantly. Sarah worked her bolt and shifted to the second target in less than 3 seconds. The second guard had heard something and was beginning to turn toward his fallen comrade when Sarah's bullet struck him. Both men were down before either could raise an alarm. Sarah allowed herself a moment to check her ammunition count and verify that her rifle was functioning properly. 6 guards eliminated 6 remaining. Her shooting had been flawless so far, but she knew that the remaining targets might be in more difficult positions. Target 7 was positioned on the roof of the main building, standing near where Sarah had observed the Scorpion earlier in the day. This guard had the best view of the surrounding area and would be the most likely to spot her team during their approach. His elimination was critical to the mission's success. The shot required maximum elevation adjustment due to the target's height and distance. Sarah calculated carefully, knowing that an error at this range could result in a complete miss. When she was confident in her calculations, she took the shot. The guard on the roof spun and fell, his body landing on a lower section of roofing where it wouldn't be immediately visible. Targets 8 and 9 were stationed at the compound's rear entrance, an area that Sarah's assault team would need to use during their infiltration. These guards were alert and professional, regularly scanning their surroundings and communicating with each other through hand signals. Sarah eliminated the first guard with a perfect chest shot, then quickly shifted to his partner. The second guard noticed his companion's fall and was reaching for his radio when Sarah's bullet struck him. Both men were down before any alarm could be raised. The 10th target was positioned in another guard tower on the compound's south side. This guard had been moving frequently, making it difficult for Sarah to predict his location. She waited patiently for him to settle into a stationary position, then took the shot. The bullet found its mark and another guard was eliminated. Target 11 presented Sarah with her most difficult shot yet. The guard was positioned behind partial cover at extreme range, with only his head and shoulders visible through her scope. The shot would require absolute precision, as there was very little margin for error. Sarah steadied her rifle and controlled her breathing, waiting for the perfect moment. When the guard shifted slightly, presenting a clearer target, she fired. The shot was perfect, striking the guard and eliminating him instantly. 1 target remained. The final guard was positioned near the compound's main building entrance, directly in the path Sarah's team would need to use during their assault. He was alert and well-positioned, making him a dangerous threat to the infiltration team's success. Sarah ranged the target and made her final calculations. This shot was critical not just for its tactical importance, but because it would signal the beginning of the assault phase. Once this guard was eliminated, her team would begin their rapid movement toward the main building. Sarah found her natural pause between heartbeats and began her trigger pull. The bullet flew true, striking the final guard and completing the most remarkable shooting display in Special Operations history. 12 targets, 12 hits, all accomplished in less than 5 minutes. Through her radio, Sarah transmitted the code word that indicated all perimeter guards had been eliminated. Her team immediately began their movement toward the compound, confident that their commander had cleared the way for their assault. The doubters who had questioned Sarah's abilities were about to witness the next phase of her extraordinary performance. Sarah watched through her scope as her team moved swiftly across the now unguarded perimeter of the terrorist compound. The elimination of 12 guards had created exactly the tactical advantage she had planned for, allowing her operators to approach the main building without being detected. Their black uniforms and careful movement made them nearly invisible in the pre-dawn darkness. Rodriguez led the assault team toward the compound's rear entrance, carrying the specialized breaching charges that would allow them rapid entry into the main building. Thompson and Williams maintained overwatch positions, ready to provide sniper support if additional enemies appeared. Martinez monitored enemy communications while coordinating with Sarah through encrypted radio channels. From her elevated position, Sarah could see the entire compound layout and was perfectly positioned to direct her team's movements. She spotted 2 guards who had been inside buildings during her initial shooting sequence and were now emerging to investigate the unusual silence from their perimeter security. These targets hadn't been part of her original 12, but they posed an immediate threat to her team's advance. Sarah quickly ranged the first new target, a fighter who was walking toward the area where several of his comrades had fallen. The man was carrying an assault rifle and moving with the caution of someone who suspected trouble. Sarah's bullet struck him before he could discover any of the eliminated guards, dropping him silently to the ground. The second new target was more alert and had taken a defensive position behind a concrete barrier. Sarah could only see portions of his body through her scope, making a clean shot more difficult. She waited patiently for him to expose himself, knowing that rushing the shot could result in a wounded enemy who might raise an alarm. When the terrorist shifted position to get a better view of the compound, Sarah took her shot. The bullet found its mark, eliminating the threat before he could alert others inside the main building. Her running total of eliminated enemies had now reached 14, all accomplished with perfect precision. Sarah's radio crackled with a whispered update from Rodriguez. The assault team had reached the main building and was preparing to breach the rear entrance. They had encountered no resistance during their approach, confirming that Sarah's shooting had been completely effective in clearing their path. Through her scope, Sarah observed the compound's main building more closely. Lights were visible in several windows, indicating that terrorists were still awake and active inside. Intelligence suggested that the Scorpion maintained a nighttime schedule, conducting business during hours when most of the local population was asleep. Sarah noticed movement in a third-floor window where the terrorist leader was believed to be located. A figure appeared briefly in the window before moving back into the room's interior. She couldn't identify the person definitively, but the location and timing suggested it might be their primary target. Rodriguez's voice came through her earpiece again, reporting that the breaching charges were in place and the team was ready to enter the building. Sarah acknowledged and prepared to provide covering fire if needed. Once her team entered the building, the mission would shift from precision shooting to close-quarters combat. The explosion from Rodriguez's breaching charges shattered the pre-dawn quiet, sending debris flying and creating a large opening in the building's rear wall. Sarah's team immediately flowed through the breach, their movements coordinated and professional despite the chaotic environment they were entering. Almost immediately, Sarah heard gunfire from inside the building as her team encountered resistance from terrorists who had been alerted by the explosion. Through her scope, she could see muzzle flashes in several windows as a firefight developed inside the main structure. A terrorist appeared at a second-floor window, apparently trying to escape the building through an exterior fire escape. Sarah eliminated him with a single shot before he could descend to ground level. Another fighter tried to use the same escape route moments later and met the same fate. Sarah's radio came alive with combat reports from her team inside the building. They were advancing floor by floor, encountering moderate resistance from terrorists who were disorganized and confused by the sudden assault. The elimination of the perimeter guards had prevented any coordinated defense, exactly as Sarah had planned. Thompson's voice cut through the radio chatter with an urgent warning. He had spotted a group of armed fighters approaching the compound from the access road, apparently responding to the sounds of combat. These reinforcements could trap Sarah's assault team inside the building if they weren't stopped. Sarah immediately shifted her attention to the approaching vehicles, counting at least 3 trucks carrying approximately 15 additional terrorists. They were still over a mile away but moving fast toward the compound. Sarah knew she had to delay or stop them to give her team time to complete their mission and escape. Sarah began engaging the lead vehicle at maximum range, her bullets striking the truck's engine block and windshield. The vehicle swerved off the road and crashed into a rocky embankment, but the other trucks continued their approach. She shifted fire to the second vehicle, achieving similar results. The third truck stopped short of the compound when its occupants realized they were under sniper fire from an unknown location. Sarah could see the terrorists deploying from the vehicle and taking defensive positions behind rocks and trees. They were now pinned down but still represented a potential threat to her team's extraction. Inside the building, Sarah's assault team had reached the second floor and was progressing toward the stairs leading to the third level, where the Scorpion was believed to be hiding. Rodriguez reported encountering heavier resistance as they advanced, with terrorists fighting from prepared defensive positions. Sarah noticed additional movement in the compound's outbuildings and realized that more enemies were emerging from hiding places throughout the facility. Her initial count of 35 terrorists had been conservative. There appeared to be at least 50 fighters total at the location. A group of terrorists emerged from a garage building and began moving toward the main structure, apparently trying to reinforce their comrades inside. Sarah engaged this new threat, eliminating 3 fighters before the others took cover. Her ammunition supply was beginning to run low after the extended engagement. Sarah's earpiece crackled with an urgent transmission from Martinez inside the building. The assault team had located the Scorpion on the 3rd floor, but he was surrounded by heavily armed bodyguards in a fortified room. The team would need additional time to breach the terrorist leader's final defensive position. From her overwatch position, Sarah could see the tactical situation developing in real time. Her team was making progress inside the building, but was now engaged in intense close-quarters combat. The reinforcements she had stopped were still pinned down, but represented a continuing threat. Additional enemies were emerging from various hiding places throughout the compound. Sarah realized that her mission was entering its most critical phase. The next few minutes would determine whether her team could successfully eliminate their primary target and escape safely. Everything they had trained for, everything Sarah had planned, would be tested in the coming moments. The doubters who had questioned whether a woman could handle the pressures of special operations command were about to witness the ultimate test of Sarah's leadership and combat skills. Her team's lives and the mission's success now depended entirely on her ability to continue providing the precise, deadly support that had brought them this far. Sarah moved swiftly down the rocky mountainside, her empty rifle secured to her pack as she navigated the treacherous terrain in near total darkness. Behind her, the terrorist compound was erupting in chaos as enemy reinforcements arrived to find their leader dead and their security completely compromised. The sound of gunfire and shouting voices echoed across the valley as confused fighters tried to understand what had happened. Her team was already moving toward the extraction point using a different route. As planned, Sarah had insisted on multiple escape paths to prevent the entire team from being trapped if one route was discovered or blocked. The separation was temporary but necessary, allowing them to reach safety even if some members encountered problems during the withdrawal. The descent was physically demanding, requiring Sarah to climb down vertical rock faces while carrying over 50 pounds of equipment. Her years of training had prepared her for exactly this type of challenge, but the adrenaline from the mission was beginning to wear off, making every movement more difficult. She forced herself to maintain focus, knowing that a single misstep could result in a fatal fall. As Sarah reached the valley floor, her radio crackled with check-ins from her team members. Rodriguez reported that the assault team had successfully exited the compound and was moving toward the primary extraction point. Thompson and Williams confirmed they were also en route, having encountered no enemy contact during their withdrawal from their sniper positions. The extraction point was still over a mile away through rough terrain that offered little concealment. Sarah knew that enemy forces would be searching for them throughout the area, using night vision equipment and possibly tracking dogs. Speed and stealth would be equally important during this final phase of their escape. Sarah heard helicopter rotors in the distance and initially feared that enemy forces had brought in air support. However, the sound was coming from the direction of the extraction point, suggesting that their own transportation had arrived on schedule. The timing was critical, as they would need to reach the landing zone before enemy search parties could locate them. Moving through a narrow canyon that led toward the extraction point, Sarah encountered 2 enemy fighters who were apparently part of a search team, looking for survivors from the compound attack. They were moving carelessly, talking loudly and using flashlights that made them easy targets in the darkness. Sarah had no ammunition remaining, but she carried a suppressed pistol for close-range encounters. She waited until the terrorists were within effective range, then eliminated both with precise shots that didn't alert other search teams in the area. The bodies would eventually be discovered, but not until after her team had safely escaped. As Sarah emerged from the canyon, she could see the lights of the extraction helicopter waiting at the predetermined landing zone. Her team members were already there, providing security while the aircraft prepared for immediate departure. The sight of her operators safe and ready for extraction filled Sarah with relief and pride. Rodriguez met Sarah as she approached the helicopter, reporting that all team members were accounted for and uninjured. The mission had been completed successfully with no friendly casualties, a remarkable achievement considering the complexity and danger of the operation. The Scorpion was dead, his organization was in chaos, and the planned terrorist attack had been prevented. As the helicopter lifted off from the mountain valley, Sarah looked back at the terrorist compound one final time. Smoke was rising from several buildings and vehicle lights could be seen moving throughout the area, as enemy forces searched for clues about who had conducted the devastating attack. They would find very little evidence, as Sarah's team had left no traces of their presence. During the flight back to their base, Sarah's team began the process of mission debriefing. Each operator reported on their specific role in the operation, highlighting what had worked well and identifying areas for improvement in future missions. The level of professionalism and attention to detail impressed even the helicopter crew, who had transported many special operations teams over the years. Thompson and Williams were particularly vocal in their praise for Sarah's shooting performance. They had witnessed many snipers in action, but Sarah's ability to eliminate 12 targets in 5 minutes at extreme range was unprecedented. Her precision and speed had made the entire mission possible, turning what could have been a costly assault into a surgical strike. Back at headquarters, news of the mission's success spread quickly through the special operations community. Senior commanders who had initially been skeptical of Sarah's appointment to team leadership were now studying her tactics and requesting her input on other complex operations. The doubters had been silenced by results that spoke louder than any argument. Sarah's innovative approach to the mission became a case study taught in military academies and special operations schools. Her combination of precision shooting, tactical planning, and adaptive leadership had created a new model for small unit operations in hostile environments. Female officers throughout the military cited Sarah as proof that gender was irrelevant when it came to combat effectiveness. The mission also had broader implications for military policy regarding women in combat roles. Sarah's performance provided concrete evidence that female soldiers could excel in the most demanding special operations assignments. Her success helped accelerate the integration of women into previously male-only military specialties. In the weeks following the mission, Sarah received numerous awards and commendations from various military and government organizations. However, she was most proud of the respect she had earned from her fellow special operations soldiers. They now judged her not by her gender but by her proven ability to complete impossible missions and bring her team home safely. Sarah's grandfather, now in his 80s, read about his granddaughter's achievements in the newspaper with tears of pride in his eyes. The little girl who had learned to shoot tin cans off fence posts had become one of the military's most capable commanders. His lessons about patience, precision, and respect for weapons had helped shape a warrior who would be remembered for generations. The terrorist organization that the Scorpion had led never recovered from his death and the destruction of their main compound. Without their charismatic leader and secure base of operations, the group fragmented into smaller, less effective cells that were easily tracked and eliminated by intelligence agencies. The planned attack that had prompted Sarah's mission never materialized. Sarah continued to serve in special operations for several more years, leading numerous successful missions and training a new generation of elite soldiers. When she eventually retired from active duty, she was offered positions with various government agencies and private security firms, all eager to benefit from her expertise and reputation. However, Sarah chose to return to her grandfather's ranch in Texas, where she established a training facility for military and law enforcement snipers. Students came from around the world to learn from the woman who had redefined what was possible in precision shooting and special operations leadership. The doubters who had once questioned whether a female could handle the pressures of Special Operations Command had been proven definitively wrong. Sarah Martinez had not only succeeded in the most demanding military roles, but had set new standards for excellence that would inspire future generations of warriors, regardless of their gender. Her legacy would endure long after the echoes of those 12 perfect shots had faded from the mountain valleys where she made history. The gunfire inside the main building intensified as Sarah's assault team encountered the Scorpion's personal security detail. Through her scope, Sarah could see muzzle flashes from the third-floor windows where the final confrontation was taking place. Her team was engaged in the most dangerous phase of the mission, fighting trained bodyguards in close quarters while trying to reach their primary target. Rodriguez's voice came through the radio with an urgent update. The terrorist leader's room was heavily fortified, with reinforced doors and strategically placed furniture that created multiple defensive positions. The Scorpion's bodyguards were well-trained, professionals who were making the assault team's advance extremely difficult. Sarah continued to monitor the compound's perimeter while her team fought inside the building. She had eliminated over 20 enemy fighters, but more terrorists kept appearing from hidden positions throughout the facility. Her ammunition was running dangerously low, and she needed to make every remaining shot count. A new threat emerged as Sarah spotted 3 terrorists attempting to flank her team's position by climbing the building's exterior fire escape. These fighters were trying to reach the 3rd floor from outside, potentially trapping her assault team between 2 groups of enemies. Sarah immediately engaged the climbers, eliminating 2 before the 3rd took cover. The remaining terrorist on the fire escape was now pinned down but still represented a significant threat. Sarah waited for him to expose himself, knowing that one poorly placed shot could alert him to her exact position. When he finally moved, Sarah's bullet struck him precisely, sending his body tumbling down the metal staircase. Inside the building, Thompson reported that the assault team had breached the terrorist leader's outer defenses, but was now facing the Scorpion's final protective detail. These bodyguards were making their last stand in a room that had been specifically prepared for this type of assault. Furniture had been overturned to create shooting positions, and the defenders had excellent fields of fire covering all possible approaches. Sarah realized that her team needed additional support to break through this final defensive line. From her position, she couldn't provide direct fire into the room where the fighting was taking place, but she noticed something that might help. A large window on the building's east side offered a potential angle into the terrorist leader's stronghold. Calculating quickly, Sarah determined that she could shoot through the window and potentially eliminate some of the Scorpion's bodyguards from her long-range position. The shot would be extremely difficult, requiring her to fire through glass at a sharp angle while compensating for bullet deflection and the possibility of hitting her own team members. Sarah carefully studied the building's layout through her scope, identifying the exact window that would give her the best angle into the terrorist leader's room. She could see shadows moving inside, indicating that the fierce firefight was continuing. Her team was running out of time, and this shot might be their only chance to break the deadlock. The distance to the window was nearly 800 yards, and shooting through glass would alter her bullet's trajectory in unpredictable ways. Sarah had practiced similar shots during training, but never under these circumstances with her team's lives hanging in the balance. She would have to trust her instincts and years of experience. Sarah lined up her shot carefully, aiming for what she believed was the position of one of the Scorpion's bodyguards, based on the muzzle flashes she could see through the window. She accounted for bullet deflection from the glass and took a deep breath before slowly squeezing the trigger. The bullet shattered the window and struck its intended target, eliminating one of the terrorist leader's defenders. Sarah immediately worked her bolt and fired again, taking out a second bodyguard who had been positioned near the window. The sudden elimination of 2 defenders from an unexpected angle created the opening her assault team needed. Rodriguez's voice came through the radio with excitement as he reported that the terrorist defenses were collapsing. The elimination of the window-side defenders had allowed Sarah's team to advance into the room where the Scorpion was making his final stand. The mission was entering its concluding phase. Through her scope, Sarah continued to watch for additional threats while her team completed their objective inside the building. She could hear intense gunfire from the 3rd floor, followed by several explosions as her team used grenades to clear the remaining defensive positions. Suddenly, Sarah noticed movement on the compound's main access road. More vehicles were approaching, apparently additional reinforcements responding to the prolonged battle. She counted at least 5 trucks carrying what appeared to be heavily armed fighters. These new arrivals would arrive within minutes and could trap her team inside the compound. Sarah immediately reported the new threat to her team, while beginning to engage the approaching vehicles. Her ammunition was critically low, but she managed to disable the lead truck with shots to its engine and driver. The convoy slowed but continued advancing toward the compound. Martinez's voice crackled through the radio with the news everyone had been waiting for. The Scorpion had been eliminated, and the primary mission objective was complete. However, the team was now facing the challenge of escaping from a compound that was about to be surrounded by enemy reinforcements. Sarah provided covering fire as her team began their extraction from the main building. She eliminated several terrorists who tried to intercept the assault team's movement, using her final rounds to clear their escape route. Her shooting had been absolutely critical to the mission's success, but now she needed to reach the extraction point herself. With her ammunition exhausted, Sarah quickly disassembled her rifle and packed her equipment for rapid movement. The extraction point was over 2 miles away through difficult mountain terrain, and enemy forces were converging on their location from multiple directions. The next phase of the mission would test every aspect of her team's training and endurance. As Sarah began her descent from the rocky outcrop, where she had conducted her remarkable shooting display, she reflected on what her team had accomplished. The doubters who had questioned her abilities had just witnessed one of the most successful special operations missions in military history. But the mission wasn't over yet, and getting her team home safely would require all of her leadership skills and tactical expertise.